Well, Dave Despain, things are looking beautiful at the Daytona International Speedway. The chilly temperatures that have been with us for the last 4 days are gone. Temperature right now, 60 degrees. The forecast looks fabulous for the next week. Sunny, not a cloud in the sky, no wind to speak of, and it is time for the first Daytona 500 practice of Speed Weeks 2009, gentlemen. And as we said, the weather's beautiful. We know we have 57 cars here. We have a 2-hour practice this morning, an hour and a half this afternoon. But Larry Mack, after that, a lot of unanswered questions.
Well, there is. You know, week after week during the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series season, we go to the racetrack, we have a practice session, we get ready to qualify, we qualify, and ho-hum, we move on to get ready to race. But this is qualifying practice for the Daytona 500. And there's all types of agendas down there. We have teams like the big teams. They've been preparing for this practice session well before 2008 season ended. But we've got some teams like Tommy Baldwin's team, Jeremy Mayfield's team. They just started putting this team together about a month ago. The bottom line, though, all 57 cars, the one agenda, how fast can I run? Because qualifying is tomorrow, and there's a lot of unknowns, Jeff, because these cars have not been on the racetrack during January testing like in the past.
No, you're right about that, Larry. And the key thing right now is the fact is who's done their homework. I mean, you think about it. You take a look here at the 24 car of Hendrick Motorsports and Jeff Gordon. We know what kind of probably trials and tests that car's been through. Wind tunnel, chassis testing, shaker rig, everything about it has been done to that race car, and they know exactly where they are based off of their information from a year ago. Like you mentioned, Tommy Baldwin, guys like Joe Nemechek, not a lot of information. They're behind the 8 ball, so we're going to find out how really good they are, maybe how lucky they are. And oh, by the way, the clock is running, and it's not a lot of time to get it right, because as you like to say, once you get here, you run what you brung, and what you got is the way it's going to be. So for a lot of these teams, they're thinking about today, but they're really already looking toward Thursday and the duel.
Qualifying is tomorrow. The only thing we know about that qualifying session, as Larry alluded to, it's its own animal, is we will set the front row. After that, the duel at Daytona, the 2 races on Thursday, which you will see here on Speed, will set the field for the Daytona 500.
Now, 2 things we will watch closely during this practice session. We looked at the weather. Temperature is not as big of an issue as the wind. Right now, we have no wind. It's 5 miles per hour. If the wind picks up, that's when it starts playing games with these cars. The other thing is we will watch closely to see if a car gets helped. And what I mean by that, if you can see a car out in front of you, that car is breaking the air from you, and it will pick your speed up. So that's something they're going to try to do, is space these cars, which can be about 3 or 4 at a time max, to where you're not getting help and you don't get deceived.
Jeff, let's take a look at the Toyota track description of this massive speedway that opened back in 1959. She's 2.5 miles around with 31 degrees of banking.
Yeah, on the straightaways, you got 3 degrees. Cross through this tribal area, 18 degrees, one of the fastest part of the racetrack. Both races, the front straightaway 3,800 feet, back straightaway 3,000 feet. But Steve, the one thing I want to talk about and kind of back up what Larry was saying, look at this long line of cars, very patiently waiting. Like I say, 57 entries. But guys, before this thing's all said and done, some of these gentlemen are not going to be gentlemen. They're going to start jumping out of line. There's going to be some people probably getting upset, because guys that are desperate to try to fix a race car have got to get more than 1 or 2 runs in during these 2-hour practices.
I always ask my boys up here about agendas. Last night in Budweiser shootout practice, we saw them running in packs. 28 drivers in the Budweiser shootout tonight at 8 o'clock. But let's talk about what we'll see in this practice.
Well, as Jeff talked about at the top of the show, you know what? You've got what you've got. NASCAR mandates so much of the setup of these race cars. There are little to no aerodynamics adjustments. You have to run 10 degrees of wing. You have to run the flat end plates on the end of the wing. They mandate the rear spring rate. They have to be 500 pounds minimum back there. Everybody runs the same rear shocks. The only thing you really have to work with chassis-wise is maybe the front sway bar, front shocks, and front springs. A couple of things they may be playing with is you do have a little bit of an option of the gear ratio, the difference between a 364, 370, but that's where if you put that 64 in, which is a higher gear, and you run faster, you have to make sure conditions are the same when you come back in here tomorrow for qualifying.
Well, there you see Matt Kenseth, former Sprint Cup Series champion. He has 9 Daytona 500 starts. best finish of 9th in 2004.
Now, we want to add that this is not a rule that you have to wait in line on pit road. NASCAR does not mandate that. It's a gentleman's agreement because everyone's on the same agenda trying to simulate a practice qualifying run. And we know when you qualify, you're out there by yourself.
Well, right now we're taking a look at Matt Kenseth. He just finished his run. He is 4th quickest out of the 4 cars that have gone. I don't think he's going to be real happy with that. But Larry, you were talking about the conditions and the gear selections and everything that kind of goes into getting these cars fine-tuned. The American flag there we're taking a look at indicates no breeze out there right now. That's really good if you're trying to get an idea about that gear ratio. But as you pointed out, you come out here tomorrow morning, if you're expecting the breeze, it may force you to make a change. And again, the direction of the wind here at Daytona can really affect the race car. If you get a breeze going down the back straightaway, helps you get up to speed. If you're bucking a headwind, trying to get up to speed, it can really affect your lap as far as that's concerned. So a lot of things, intangibles, that go into these practice sessions that a lot of these teams and these engineers are paying attention to. And right now we're taking a look at the 07 car. And oh, by the way, it's not who you think it is.
It's not Clint Boyer.
It's Casey Mears.
We've got a lot of splaining to do about all these changes.
Glad Larry Mack is up
Stay
here.
tuned and get your playbook and calendars ready to go.
We'll be back to Daytona. Glad you're with us here on Speed. Back at the Daytona International Speedway, Kyle Busch down the backstretch is a 2-hour practice for Daytona 500 qualifying, which is tomorrow underway. We have an hour-and-a-half practice this afternoon.
And I tell you, this will be the cat we'll be watching, I think, during all of Speed Weeks. When you look back at the 4 restrictor plate tracks last year, the 4 restrictor plate races, obviously he led a bunch of laps here, 86 laps in the Daytona 500.
Ooh, there's somebody who's happy. Car feels smooth, got a clean cut. It means he actually killed the engine, and so they can take a look at the plugs and see if they can get him more out of the engine.
What a spectacular year for Kyle Busch in 2008. 8 wins in the Sprint Cup Series, 21 altogether.
And what I was going to say, he did finish 4th in the Daytona 500, but 2 of those Sprint Cup Series wins, they came at the restrictor plate races here in July, Talladega back in the spring. So this group at the restrictor plate tracks, they were mighty solid. Greg Biffle right now in the 16 car. We've logged times on 10 cars, and Greg Biffle right now is 5th quickest at a 48.44. Jimmy Johnson is quickest at a 48.20.
We're down in the garage area. Dick Berggren has an update on Dale Earnhardt Jr. Good morning, Dick.
Well, good morning to you, Steve. So many new teams, so many new sponsors, so much newness going on here at Daytona. I decided to hang out with a guy that has been around for a long time, Dale Earnhardt Jr. He's got basically the same crew. He's got the same race car. He ran at both of the events last year at Daytona. Importantly, that car qualified 3rd for both of those events last year. So they've got a known commodity. They know they've got a fast car, but they also know they've got a terrific driver in that Junior has always started in the top 10 for the Daytona 500. Matt Yoakum.
Dick, I don't know of any driver in the garage area who's been more excited about the 2009 season kicking off than Ryan Newman. Counting down the days until it's Daytona 500 practice qualifying tomorrow. Very excited, this entire team. They built this race car over the past month. One of the very first cars built under the Stewart-Haas banner. Newman has his old number from the old USAC midget days. A new sponsor, a new crew chief, so many new members on this team, but the same fire is still there. He wants to repeat as a Daytona 500 champion. He was counting down the days until he got to Daytona. Now he has to count down the minutes until he can roll off the grid and go out and take his laps here at the Big D.
And you know what's interesting about Ryan Newman as we watch Bill Elliott in the 21 car? I might add the track record holder here at Daytona International Speedway, well before restrictor plates came into play. But we were talking to Ryan Newman and Tony Stewart yesterday, and I think everyone thinks that one reason that Tony Stewart hired Ryan Newman, besides he's a great race car driver, is the fact that they had the same background in open wheels. In contrary Tony and Ryan both said one reason that we felt like this deal was going to work so well, we have so much in common. We love the outdoors. We love restoring old cars. So actually, I think the thing that really draws these guys together and gives them a bond has really nothing to do with what goes on the racetrack.
No, they both have commented about the fact that it's not only what they bring to the racetrack, but even Tony said, they like the same things as far as even in homes. I mean, Ryan's wife, Chrissy, they built a log cabin home there in North Carolina, and they're helping Tony right now build his new place. I mean, she's helping give some input there. So it's a great camaraderie. They very much believe in the fact, because they like to use the term, the family tree. And they're talking about their entire race team as being a family. And I really think there could be some great things come out of that group before the end of the year. I mean, don't be surprised if those guys are able to get to victory lane. I mean, they're going to be tough.
Martin Truex Jr. in the 1 car. We had Chip Ganassi on Trackside Live last night, and he's now a teammate.
The 21 car, Steve, look what he's done right there. Jumped to the top of the chart right there. Bill Elliott got himself a pretty impressive lap. His first lap was good, Larry, and came right back here on that second lap and jumped ahead of Martin Truex Jr.
It's a good lap for Bill, but I'm not surprised to see these DEI Ganassi cars running well as we watch Dale Earnhardt Jr. start his first run, because if you go back to the last few restrictor plate races of last year, 2008, all of the cars, Richard Childress's cars and DEI's cars with the ECR engine package, those guys really started coming to life. They really found something with this restrictor plate engine.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. won the Daytona 500 in 2004. One win a year ago, that coming at Michigan. Talking about, I want to get back to Chip Ganassi for a second as we watch Dale Earnhardt Jr. He talked last night about how there was some pain involved in merging DEI and Ganassi, and he had some employees that they had to let go, but he was encouraged and happy to see a lot of those crew members working for other race teams down here in Daytona.
Well, one of the things we mentioned at the top of the show was a lot of race teams that were put together in the final hours of 2008, even on into 2009, like Tommy Baldwin Racing, like the deal that Tony Furr, Jeremy Mayfield, Cecil Tipton's put together, Jeffrey Bodine and Larry Gunsman's team. The great thing about that is it put people back to work. Now, when I look at their race teams in the garage area, the guys working on their car may have a lot of different shirts on, but you know what? The bottom line is they're working, and I think those guys need to be commended for what they've done.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. jumps up second quick of 16 drivers to make runs here on the high banks of Daytona. Bill Elliott, the fastest. We'll be right back. Glad you're with us. Speed's presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup practice from Daytona is brought to you by Toyota. For the latest on Toyota racing information, visit toyotaracing.com. Toyota, moving forward. By Old Spice Swagger, the scent that makes a difference. And by Lazy Boy Furniture Galleries. Comfort, it's what we do. It's good to see the 43 car back at Daytona, driven by Reed Sorensen. We've talked about changes, guys, since we've been on the air, and that was Evernham Motorsports, which became Gillette Evernham, and it's now known simply as Richard Petty Motorsports.
Yeah, Ray Evernham is still involved as kind of an advisor, but there's no question Ray is going to turn more focus, I think, to doing some television stuff, helping develop drivers, and he's also become a track promoter here lately. Bought a little old dirt track up there around the Mooresville, Troutman area.
Lincoln Speedway, as a matter of fact.
Reed Sorensen just turned 23 years old the other day, February 5th. Also DW's birthday.
So how old did DW turn?
He's not 23 years old.
You think?
Larry, he won't be listening.
Good.
He'll be back up here in a little while.
I wouldn't have said it. I know he's down there in that motor coach listening.
Bill Elliott.
You sure he's not out in the garage?
Chances are in the motor coach listening.
Bill Elliott, fastest of those, practicing here as we watch the 19 car. Elliott Sadler.
Hey guys, I think we'd be remiss not to mention the little ordeal he went through this past off
He
season.
had a very
the
busy
ordeal of getting married, or the ordeal of being in and out of the 19 car.
Well, I think getting married was the easy part. He didn't have a valid passport to go on his honeymoon, but he got that sorted out.
That would have been really an awkward moment, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would have.
Honey, enjoy the honeymoon.
But you know, the good news is he's back in the 19 car. I read some of Elliott's quotes, and he had some interesting perspective on this whole situation with George Gillette and that group over there, because that was actually going on, I think, before the merger with Richard Petty. He said, you know, we have not performed like we needed to, and I needed a wake-up call, and the race team needed a wake-up call, and we all feel better about things today. Sometimes when you have problems, unless you just really get after it and sort through it and maybe say some things and things happen you're really not excited about, they don't get any better.
Back to the garage and Dick Berggren.
If you watched practice last night on Speed TV, you saw Joey Logano having a terribly tough time with his shootout car. Saw on the wheel, left to right, right to left, just trying desperately to hang on, which he did. Didn't hit anything. Did a nice job last night. The kid has never raced a single lap in anything here at Daytona, so he has a lot to learn, but the crew has a lot to learn as well about what they need to give him. And for today's car, they've given him a really good piece, much better than what he had last night. I talked to Joey just before he went back out onto the racetrack, or at least heading out in that direction. He said the car is much better than what he had last night. He's a lot more comfortable in it. So a sigh of relief for the fans of this 18-year-old.
Yeah, the only thing about that, Jeff, you're comparing an apple to a banana right now, because last night those cars were in race trim getting ready for the Budweiser shootout. They were out there on 20-something lap tires, sliding around in the draft. This car today, in these two practice sessions, it will be by itself. It will always be on fresh tires, and it's in qualifying trim. The proof of the pudding will be when they put this car in race trim for Wednesday's practice, getting ready for the dual races.
You're right about that, Larry. And again, you know, the great job he did last night, but at the same time, you forgot to mention, when you're out there in that pack and you got guys like Dale Earnhardt Jr. basically beating on your back bumper, it can make a car feel a lot looser at what it really is. So hopefully, you know, he's going to be able to take what he learned last night and, you know, make things better for the day as well as the rest of the week, because tonight's will be a big night for him. This is what I'm talking about, folks. He's out there. Dale Earnhardt Jr. comes up behind him right there coming off the corner. I think he was expecting to slide up. He didn't. All of a sudden, he's got him loose. He's got him real loose, and he gets down underneath him. But that's what a veteran can do to a rookie. He'll take advantage of your weaknesses. He'll take advantage of the fact your race car is all over the racetrack, and it just compounds those problems.
Joey's going to get some more experience later today in the ARCA race. He starts in the 3rd position. You'll see that on Speed. We'll be right back. 24 minutes into a 2-hour practice. You look high atop the Daytona International Speedway, and Jeff Hammond talk about it, particularly at restrictor plate tracks, the importance of those spotters up there.
Yeah, they're definitely I think the life of a race car when it comes to protecting the race car driver during the course of the race. But they also play a real important role. Now, they've got to be up there. At any time a race car is on the racetrack, you've got to have a spotter and a spotter stand. But today, what they're doing is they're helping to space these guys out. Larry's already talked about, if you can see the car in front of you, you're getting help. And you need to be able to keep that car as far away from any kind of help as possible. And that's one of the things that the crew chief is dependent upon these guys about. From down on the trucks, you can't clear them as good as you can from up there. So these spotters have got a lot of responsibility today to make sure that each lap you get is a clean one, so you know what you've got.
Let's go to Matt.
Steve, as a kid, Eric Almirola would always take the I-4 corridor, jump on I-4 from Tampa over to Daytona to watch the NASCAR stars of the day compete. Now he is at home in the 8 car. So you made a whopping 2 laps, Eric. What feedback did you give Doug Randolph, your new crew chief?
Just good job. We got a pretty fast Guitar Hero Chevrolet here, so that's exciting to come down here after no testing, and you never know what you got. So come down here and see where you stack up, and we're pretty good. So these guys just picked right up where they left off on their restrictor plate racing all last year.
And I know you're pretty excited too about your sponsor, because it's a product that you like to spend a lot of time with.
Yeah, we stayed up the last couple nights pretty late. When we got here to the racetrack, we had a box in our motorhome there with a brand new Guitar Hero World Tour. So we rocked out for a couple nights and haven't got much sleep, but to do this here, make a couple laps, single car runs, you don't need a whole lot of sleep.
Now, can Hammond and McReynolds come over and play with you maybe Sunday night after Bud Pole or Coors Pole qualifying?
Usually those guys are always giving them a hard time about how old they are, so I might as well join in, and I don't know if they're young enough to play Guitar Hero.
Whoa. Well, guys, you have an invite as long as you're there.
No, Matt, that is not an invite. That's a challenge.
Hey, Matt, Hammond can play Guitar Hero as long as it's Merle Haggard.
Well, this is the thing, Steve. Eric also did say that he has an early bird special for the guys in the booth if they want to come by from 4 to 6.
2 things. Close Eric's window net and close Matt's mic.
Amen. I like that.
Another one of our changes for 2009. You see Bobby Labonte in the 96 car.
Crew chief by Todd Parrott. Right now, not surprised, Bobby Labonte, 4th quickest. I want to go back and add one thing about the spotters. NASCAR mandates, if race cars are on the racetrack, you have to have a spotter in the spotter stand. Let me tell you one other role they can play today. Is we watch these cars with the carburetor restrictor plate, we know the fastest lap is going to be on the 2nd lap. And they're probably going to run the shortest distance around this 2.5-mile racetrack right around the bottom. What these spotters can give drivers and crew chiefs information, for example, right now, I'm sure what a lot of the guys in the garage area ask the spotters, where did Bill Elliott run on the racetrack his first lap? Did he run up at the top of the track? Did he run at the bottom? Because it's like a corkscrew. And the more you go with this carburetor restrictor plate, the further you go, the faster you run. That's the reason the fastest lap, the money lap, will always be lap 2.
You know, Larry, you mentioned Bill Elliott. I think it bears repeating. He has the track record here, 210.364 miles per hour.
2010?
2010.
Compared to being the fastest right now at 187.5 miles per hour. That's faster than I want to go right there.
We'll be right back to Daytona. 33 of 57 drivers have been on the high banks here at Daytona International. Bill Elliott still the fastest, 187.473 miles per hour. You see the 21 atop the leaderboard. Just behind him, 88, Dale Earnhardt Jr. Dick Berggren is with him.
Indeed. Junior, you all done? You going to work on the car some more? How you doing?
We got another practice, and we're going to make some runs in it. The car was scraping the ground a little bit, and got to look at how we can, what's the right way to get the car up off the ground. That's probably knocking a little bit of time out of it. But it runs great, and the motor is unbelievable. As usual, the engine job does a great job making a lot of power. I was really happy with that. And the guys at the shop did a real good job working on how the car rolls, taking all the drag out of the drive line, you know, the bearings and the wheel bearings and the drive shaft balance and all that stuff. The car's real quick and accelerating, and a lot of that has to do with not only the power, but how they work the drag out of the drive line throughout the off season. So the car's, my Daytona 500 car looks pretty good so far.
Good for you. Thank you. Matty?
Over in the 9 garage with Casey Kane looking over his Budweiser machine. And Casey, we're just looking over your brand new seat for 2009. You've gone to the Hendrick carbon fiber seat. So how's it working out so far?
Well, it was good yesterday. It's just, everything's just the exact same. They put a lot of time into it to build a seat that was comfortable for me. And I think Mark Martin's also using it. It's a little different than the other ones. But mileage joys have been great in the past. All my open wheel guys use them. And but we're going to try this carbon seat for a little bit here, and so far so good. They can see the inserts, so the head, and every time you get in, it's the exact same. The Schroth belts are always the same. Everything about it. So it's a nice piece.
So looking at your car from last night, looking ahead to the week, excited about Speed Weeks 2009?
Yeah, I am. They fixed the right side of it. I crushed it yesterday. So these guys have been working a little bit harder than they probably needed to, but. They fixed it. Car looks good. It drove good yesterday. The engines are running well. We just we need to keep working on it. Be good to go. It's a fun race tonight. Just kind of all out and have a good time.
So we would be remiss if we didn't get an update on how is the Casey Kane open wheel program doing out at the dirt track this week.
They were great the first 3 nights, and last night I think they were off just a little bit, like 13th and 14th. We got 2 cars now, Joey Saldana and then Craig Delansky. We added that one this year, and It was off a little last night from what I've understood. I didn't go out there. I had a deal with Dirks Bentley, a Bud deal last night, and Dirks played 5 songs, and we had a good time afterwards, so it was a fun night.
All right, thanks, Case.
Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. We just saw the 0-0 of David Rudiman. Joe Nemechek, one of the teams that Larry referenced, who's an independent team. This year we have 15 entries that are single car teams compared to 8 from a year ago.
And right now, Joe Nemechek is planning to run the entire schedule. Right now they have cars ready for California in a couple of weeks, for Las Vegas. Felipe Lopez is the crew chief over there. They brought Derek Finley, who's worked for Bill Davis Racing, DEI. He's over there helping this effort. Biggest thing, like Joe told me, I need to put something on this hood and on these quarter panels. And right now, he's 15th quickest out of the 36 cars that's actually made a practice run here. That's a good
run right there. I mean, and it's going to be really tight. As far as what I can tell right now, it looks like it's going to be pretty tight with these guys who are trying to get in there and get them a good, solid, fast lap, so they got a little insurance in case they don't race their way in during the next week's duel here on Speed.
Well, Jeff, there's a guy that hated to see last year come to an end. Jamie McMurray had 3 straight finishes of 3rd at the end of the season, 5 of the last 6 races in the top 5.
And interestingly enough, to me, is that, you know, Larry Carter was his crew chief.
Pretty dirty.
He is telling Donnie Wingo, his new old crew chief, that the car's a little bit on the darty side, and you know, feels kind of like it has a little more work done to it. But again, this guy here, I think, is where everybody's looking at to do something this year. I think there's a lot of pressure on this 2016, as well as this driver, to pick up where they left off and to get back to victory lane. I mean, I think they've got to make it happen.
And with that thing being a little darty, obviously you're trying to get that thing to roll as straight as possible. Could just be a slight toe out adjustment, just a little adjustment.
Speed is dueling in Daytona. Thursday, the most exciting qualifying event in NASCAR is only on Speed, the Gatorade Duel at Daytona. Be there for the 2 races that set the field for the Daytona 500, 2 Eastern, Thursday on Speed.
You know, we talked at the top of the show about a lot of teams anticipating today and tomorrow, but Thursday is the day they are anticipating, because we know when all the smoke cleared after those 2 150-mile races, there'll be 43 cars in the garage area, and there'll be a number of cars loading up and going to the house.
You said smoke. Guess who's on the racetrack?
Smoke.
How about that?
Tony Stewart.
Timing is everything, isn't it, Larry?
It is.
Yep, 14 cars, 14 teams, I should say, will not make this Daytona 500, the 51st Great American Race.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable what this young man has done here. You know, Tony Stewart said he never thought he'd be in the position he's in right now, but as an owner, all eyes are watching, because to me, the last successful owner driver was Alan Kowicki, and he was able to win a championship. He won races, had a very successful operation, and I think, you know, if you were to ask Tony that, he would like to wind up being like that. He'd like to have that kind of respect and that kind of success. So it'd be interesting to see here as he completed lap number 1. He was 35th quickest on the board, and pretty decent first lap. He picks up about a half a second right there. He'll be right up here, it looks like, maybe knocking on the top 10.
Steve, you love nuggets. I have a nugget for you.
Whip it on.
Tony is actually the most recent Sprint Cup Series champion, not named Jimmy Johnson. That's a nugget.
Did you work on that after NASCAR
I
performance?
worked on that half the night.
Steve, he didn't quite make it to the top 10.
But you know what? It's hard to believe.
No.
It's hard to believe that he's the last guy to win a championship aside from Jimmy Johnson in the 48 team.
No, it ain't, because Jimmy's won the last 3.
Last 3.
But Tony does wind up being 13th quickest. Pretty good little effort right there. First time on the racetrack. I think as an owner, he should be pretty happy. And as a driver, he should be ecstatic.
Jeff, we talked about this in preseason Thunder, but I think there are some reasonable expectations, high expectations for that race team. They've got all the resources available to them from Hendrick Motorsports, and you got 2 wheel men in those race cars. Why not?
One thing that you got to understand, and it's the same no matter whether you're talking about Tony Stewart or you're talking about, you know, the Roush Fenway group, is the chemistry. You can put all the right people in all the right places, and it can look like it on paper it should be successful. but the people, we got to keep going back to that. This thing is a team sport. And if the team is not working together, if the driver and the crew chief and the engineers and the car chief are not communicating, they'll never make it to what their expectations are, or a lot of people's expectations are. They've got to have chemistry. They've got to work together. They've got to become a team. This is a great opportunity. They're here for 2 weeks to make that happen. And, you know, if they can, it will show out and prove out. But we still got a long ways to go, and I think really the real tests are going to come after we leave Daytona. We were watching Borsett, a guy that I love to pull for because he's such a tenacious racer. He loves to come to Daytona and challenge these guys. He really is an all-star as far as Grand Am racing, and he races all around the world. And it's great to see Boris back here. And basically, I guess what kind of turns out to be one of those independent Ford teams that's got a lot of support from Yates Racing as well as Roush Fenway.
Right now, Boris is 35th quickest out of the 44 cars that's been on the racetrack.
Bill Elliott still the quickest, part of the fan zone.
Hey, can I go down there?
You can.
I want to go. I want to try to do that.
Hurry. Affordable ticket package still available to experience the thrill of NASCAR at Las Vegas. Experience the unique combination of racing action and entertainment only Las Vegas Motor Speedway can provide. For more information, visit lvms.com or call 1-800-644-4444 and join us at the Speed Stage in 2009 at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. 44 minutes into this 2-hour practice, we go into the garage, and Matt Yoakum.
Well, Steve, Jack Roush just walked by. He was all smiles. Jimmy McMurray's in a great mood. And you've got to be in a great mood for a number of reasons. But number one, you've got Donnie Wingo back as your crew chief, your coach, on top of the pit box for the races this year.
Yeah, and it's really hard to explain to people when you feel comfortable, and you always hear like Darrell Waltrip and everybody talk about having chemistry, and I don't really think chemistry is something you make. I think that when you first meet and you work together, it's either there or it isn't. And Donnie has always kind of been the standard that I've based the 15 other crew chiefs I've had since then at Roush on, and it's just really comforting having him back. And I don't know, it's hard to explain to people the way you feel.
With the layoff and the testing rules for 2009, a lot of people look for different avenues to stay in shape as far as driving. What did you do?
I went and raced my go-kart, and I did pretty well in Vegas. Went to the SCUSA Super Nationals, and I didn't race like the pro class, but I did race a shifter class and had like a 15-year-old kid show me up. He ended up beating me, but I had a lot of fun, and then I came back down here to Daytona and ran horrible. Probably had the best pit crew. I had a guy named Gary Carlton and another guy named DJ helping me, and Gary is like one of the best karters in America. So I thought I brought a loaded gun, but I ran horrible. But we had a great time, and I got to come down here with my dad. NASCAR.com did this really cool article about my dad and I doing that. So you know, without the testing, I had a great winter. I mean, really laid back, and went and raced my go-kart because it's fun, first off, but also to kind of stay in shape. And you know, I do a fair amount of training, but you can only ride a bike so much, or run, or lift weights. You can only do so much of that, and to get back in the go-kart and actually drive that's the ultimate.
Well, the car's up on scales. They're putting sticker tires, brand new tires in the car. They've already trimmed the side skirts on this 26 machine.
Thank you, Mac. Former Daytona 500 champion Kevin Harvick on the racetrack. He won in 2007, and we saw Scott Riggs of the 36 just a moment ago. Great story there. Riggs teaming with former Daytona 500 winning crew chief Tommy Baldwin, another one of those independent teams we talked about as they try to make the Daytona 500.
Well, that was a pretty sporty lap that Scott Riggs laid down for Tommy Baldwin as we watched Kevin Harvick in his 29 car. Right now, Riggs is 13th quickest, and once again, and we are biased in this booth, but you know what? I'm pulling for Tommy Baldwin because you know what? That's a race team that's 1 month old. Tommy and Beth Baldwin, they've poured everything they have into that race team, and here they are. It's just practice, 13th quickest. Our sport, obviously like all businesses across America, it's been hit by the economic times we're going through. It's people like Tommy Baldwin, the passion that he has, that's going to keep this sport up at the top.
Interesting, Tommy said in the offseason, people would look at where we are economically as a challenge. He sees it as an opportunity.
Absolutely.
It's all a perception and the willingness to take a gamble. I mean, it's not something that's going to just happen overnight. A lot of hard work's going to have to go into it, but it's off at least to a good start. Speaking of good starts, I don't think Kevin Harvick's going to be totally in love with that. He's wound up being 20th quickest after making his first effort on the racetrack in that number 29 car of Richard Childers Racing. Here's another guy that's trying to make a go at it, Tony Raines.
And one other note, too, about Tommy Baldwin. Of course, he won the Daytona 500 with Ward Burton in 2002. And his driver, Scott Riggs, a guy that's got a lot of talent, feels like he's been kicked to the curb, so there's a lot to pull for with that race team as Raines in the 37 heads down onto the apron. Well, 51 of our 57 competitors have been on the racetrack here in the opening practice for the Daytona 500. Coverage of NASCAR Sprint Cup practice from Daytona is brought to you by Verizon Wireless. Call more people, use 0 minutes, only on America's largest mobile-to-mobile calling family, Verizon Wireless. By Old Spice Swagger, the scent that makes a difference. And by Toyota. For the latest racing information, visit toyotaracing.com. Toyota, moving forward.
Kyle Busch in the 18 car. This has been his second run, and it actually, I believe it is his fastest that he's been. 48.28, he's 11th quickest. You know, one other thing about, you mentioned the single car teams that are here and the teams that's just been put together. What this is also a product of is this new car that we're racing now. Back in the day before this new car, you know what, Tommy Baldwin, Jeremy Mayfield, all these guys that put teams together, they couldn't go to another race team and buy a car that was going to be able to compete with the Jimmy Johnsons and the 48 car. But because this car, it has no gray area in it, you know what, you can go buy a car from Hendrick and you pretty much know body-wise it's probably not that bad off of what these guys actually have here. This car has really helped the situation with the single car teams, at least as far as being able to bring a car here to Daytona and be competitive.
Let's go to Dick Bergeron.
With Tony Stewart, with not just a brand new car, but also a brand new team. Even the toolbox is new. Smoke, how's the thing going for you?
So far, we're real happy. You know, everybody on this Office Depot Old Spice team has worked really hard just to get here. So really proud of these guys. Ryan was, I think, 6th when I came in, and we were 13th on the board. So really, really proud of our guys and the U.S. Army guys over there for Ryan, too.
Bunch of people underneath your race car right now changing the exhaust system. What's going on?
Just drug it a little bit on the racetrack, so they're going to go to a different pipe, and hopefully it'll clearance it enough to where we don't have to worry about hitting it on the racetrack.
As good as you're running, had you expected this to come down here and be, well, about the top third?
Well, I'll be honest, I didn't expect anything. I mean, I just have kept my mind open to whatever happens, and where we're at's where we're at. So when I saw Ryan go out, and at the time that he made his run and he popped up 5th on the board, I was beating on the steering wheel. I was pretty happy about that. It's like a proud papa right now. So just really happy. I mean, these guys have all worked so hard. It's the first time that I've ever been in a shop during the off season. Normally we're off, you know, resting and relaxing somewhere, but been there just about every day with these guys, and you know, to see where they came from and how far they've gotten in such a short amount of time, I'm really proud of this group.
Steve, when Tony got out of the car and just looked around at the crew, Bobby Hutchins and Darian Grubb, his crew chief, the smiles were everywhere. This is a happy place to be right now.
Well, Dick, it's pretty impressive to come down to the Daytona 500 and be fast right out of the box. I don't care how talented you are as a driver. Jeff or Larry are as talented as your mechanics, your engineers, and all of that is. It's still impressive.
When you talk about that, I had been in that situation one time before whenever Darrell Waltrip decided to start his own race team back in '91, and we went through some of the same things that these guys are going through as far as putting the car together, making decisions, working really hard during the offseason, and I know how, I guess you might say, the smiles are there for joy, but also sighs of relief, or smiles of relief, Steve, because you know, you don't want to come down here and have all the hype and all the attention that's been given to you kind of like disappoint. And I think being able to be successful off the truck, I mean, that's what I was talking about at the beginning of the program. Who did their homework? We're starting to see that. Guys like the Wood brothers with Bill Elliott, Martin Truex Jr., Tony Stewart, Ryan Newman. These guys are doing their homework, and it's showing.
Now we're looking at another one of those single car teams, Kirk Shelmerdine in his 27 car. Now Kurt made the Daytona 500 back in 2006, and actually finished 20th. Now, even though Kurt over the last several years has been pursuing a driving career, I think something especially a lot of our new fans don't realize, so many of the wins and championships that Dale Earnhardt Sr. had, including a lot of wins here at Daytona, the man that was guiding the ship from a crew chief's position was Kurt Schellerding.
I was going to say, you guys, both of you, matched wits with him atop the pit box for many years and many races.
And I'm going to tell you what, though, Kurt, a lot like Hammond, he wrote a lot of the rules in the rule book.
Thanks, Larry.
All I did was obey him.
It's still the fastest. Now that's an interesting ticket right there. Fans high atop the garage looking down on their favorite teams and drivers, and beautiful weather here at the Daytona International Speedway. We are under caution nearly 57 minutes into this 2-hour practice.
I think it's awesome what so many of these racetracks are doing for our fans. You know, you have the fan area here at Daytona International Speedway, out at Kansas, Chicago Motor Speedway. They have where the fans can work between watching the two garage areas.
Vegas.
I mean, just look right there. There's windows that they can actually take pictures, and right
Dick,
below
turn
that
around and
window,
smile. Wait a minute,
Dick.
smile.
Smile.
Turn around, Dick.
Sign some autographs.
See, they're waving back.
But right below that window, there's actually some little trap doors. They can hand the drivers, sign some autographs, Dick.
Yeah.
And you can actually sign autographs.
It's fan friendly. Hey, what about Denny Hamlin on our trackside last night? He's going to give 4 tickets on his website, dennyhamlin.com, to every single race. But you have to send, you see Denny's car there, go online and send him a reason why you need the tickets. 4 tickets to every race.
I think it's great. And like he said, obviously if you can't make it to the Daytona 500, well, you can look down the schedule and say, hey, I want to go to Richmond, or I'd like to go to Pocono, and you can go ahead and put your entries in early for the tickets that you'd like to win.
And I like what he said. I want to see a story. Tell me a story.
That's it.
Well, you documented this yesterday, Steve, and our Jeff Hammond said this earlier in the year. This is a year about taking care of our fans. That's what we all have to do. You know what? It's what the racetracks are doing. We talked to Robin Bragg, president of Daytona. They continue to drop ticket prices across the board everywhere at all the racetracks. There's not a major league sport that does things for fans like the promoters of our racetracks. You have free parking at a lot of areas of the racetracks. You can't go to an NFL football game and carry a cooler with your food and your drink in there. I'm telling you, the racetracks are trying diligently to help our fans, and that's what we have to do.
Steve, I mean, the bottom line is we didn't build this. They did. They gave us an opportunity to get it to where it is, but, you know, without the fans, we wouldn't be the sport we are today.
Saw Carl Edwards in the garage area, and his teammate Greg Biffle for Roush Fenway Racing out on the racetrack. The only drivers who have yet to get on the track, Carl Long, Kelly Byers, Norm Benning, James Harvey Hilton, and Jeffrey Bodine.
Good to see Jeffrey back at the racetrack. Guys, I think y'all were probably talking about this last night during the practice sessions, but I really like the new look of the Ford Fusion, the new decal package they got on the front of these cars. I really think it makes that car look a lot more like the passenger car that we're seeing riding around town today.
And I think one thing we need to talk about, and we talked about this a little bit on those 2 Budweiser shootout practices yesterday, the Ford and the Dodges, they actually have a new nose this year that NASCAR has approved. Just little subtle differences that just give them a little better aerodynamics. Right now, we actually have 2 Fords in the top 5, 3 in the top 10. But Jeff and I were looking through our scoring monitor a while ago, also talking about the Dodges, a lot like a year ago. When we looked at practice before qualifying, when we looked at qualifying, there were no Dodges to be found even remotely near the top. And right now, we only have about 3 Dodges in the top 30 in this practice session. But those cars seem to be good in race trim, just like this car right here, Kurt Busch in the 2. Remember, his teammate Ryan Newman won the Daytona 500. Kurt finished second. So I would got to believe that that's what they're banking on, Jeff, is once again they're going to have good race cars. Maybe not fast cars for qualifying, but good race cars.
And, you know, qualifying is very important, but when you know you're in the race, what's important after that? The race itself.
And we should point out, a year ago, Kurt Busch started 43rd in the Daytona 500 and finished second.
And I think he started at the back of the pack in the July race in a backup car and ended up finishing in the top 5 as well.
There's a new combination. You may see a lot of this going on during the course of this year. Max Jones, basically general manager over at Yates Racing, talking to his new driver right there, Bobby Labonte, in the Ask.com car.
I talked to Max Jones yesterday, who is, you know, certainly partnered up with Doug Yates.
Yep.
And I said, Max, perseverance paid off, didn't it? Because if you remember last year, both of their race cars, they were not fully sponsored all year long. It was hit and miss. This year, the 98 car, Paul Menard with Menards on it, and then the 96 car, Bobby Labonte, who also is partnered with Hall of Fame Racing. They have the Ask.com on there, so you could see a smile on Max's face yesterday.
Oh, definitely so. As we're taking a look here, another independent car not sponsored this year is Mike Wallace. And to me, Larry, if there's a guy that can get the job done in the draft here at Daytona, Mike Wallace is definitely better, one of the best racers out there when it comes to the draft. He may not be that fast, but you're going to have to watch out for that car when they drop the green flag on Thursday for one of the duels.
Dick Berggren done signing autographs, so go back to him in the garage.
Okay. With Jimmy Johnson, this is Jimmy Johnson, right? I mean, you don't look like Jimmy Johnson.
I know it. It's amazing what some facial hair will do to everybody. It freaked everybody out. So I like that I have everybody asking questions.
I wonder if you could give me some tips, because I've got some problems, not on my chin, but elsewhere. Let's talk about the car a little bit. You got a guy down there grinding away. They've just put a new chip in your ignition system, so you're going to turn more or less RPM. Mechanics all over it. But gosh, Jimmy, you're fast.
We are fast, and the surprising thing about this is that's Canal Center there with the grinder.
Chad, you let him operate.
Wait, get a camera right there. I want to see this.
You can
Get
see
a camera.
everybody looking with concern, and look at all the faces down there. If you can zoom in on them, everybody's like, "What in the world is he doing?" But we're having fun. The car has a lot of speed in it. You know, we tried some things there that slowed it down. So it's kind of that normal deal here at Daytona. What you show up with is what you have, and you know, just see what we got. That front row would be nice, and I think track position is going to be very, very important come 500.
You look like a man who's having fun.
I am having fun. I had a lot of fun over the offseason, too. I'm glad this season is here with some structure, and we can get back to work getting these race cars. I had a new paint scheme with the Slows Impala. Looks really good. We're going to have the Cobalt paint scheme a lot on the car as well this year, so it should be a fun year all around.
Good to see you again.
See you. Take care.
Well, there's the fastest driver on this Daytona International Speedway, Bill Elliott, a two-time winner of the Daytona 500. His wins coming in 1985 and 1987. 9 top 5 finishes for the man from Dawsonville, Georgia.
Well, he stepped it up just a little bit more. He becomes the first car to run in the 47-second bracket, 47.96. And that's kicking up close to, let's see, I'm trying to look at the miles per hour.
Hey, that's awesome, Bill. Sorry about that, guys.
Hammond's on time.
I couldn't help it. I couldn't help it.
Chad Canal, the team transporter here in the infield. Sorry for the audio problems we're experiencing. There's that 36 car that we saw. Riggs, the driver.
Well, Steve, all I can say right there, once again, this is one of those feel-good stories that we hope will have a positive around the sun.
And again, we've got some audio challenges. We're going to shut cars. in business. We apologize for the audio difficulties, and yes, I know it was some of our best work.
It was.
We let it breathe, baby. We let it breathe.
They've been telling us to let it breathe for 9 years.
Yep. There you have it. Michael Waltrip, 37th overall.
I know Michael Waltrip, and I will guarantee you that he is not showing his hand just yet. Probably will not show his hand until qualifying tomorrow. Remember, he did sit on the outside of the front row last year for the Daytona 500, and I just think
he's playing games.
There's no reason to show your cards. You show your cards, it'll make people work hard.
Michael won this race 2001 and 2003. New paint scheme for Juan Pablo Montoya. He's got Target.
Well, his teammate David Ruderman right now is 12th quickest in a 00 car. And then I look at the 3 Joe Gibbs Toyotas right now. They are 4th, 5th, and 6th.
And no, if you're looking at Juan Pablo Montoya's car, don't be surprised. It is a Chevrolet. This year they have switched from Dodge from a year ago, and they are now running Chevrolet. Speaking of Chevrolet, Smoke is back out, and he's also back in a Chevrolet. Last year driving for Joe Gibbs Toyotas, but he's making another attempt here. Currently 18th quickest.
Yeah, back to those DEI Ganassi cars. Right now they are 3rd with Martin Truex Jr. Montoya is 22nd. Almirola is 11th. So those 3 cars looking pretty good right now.
Bill Elliott still with the fastest time. That's a 47.96 or 187.645 miles per hour. This practice goes to the bottom of the hour, 12:30 Eastern.
He jumps up Tony Stewart to 14th in this 14 car.
Regan Smith aboard the 78.
Now this car ran the entire schedule last year. Right now, unless more sponsorship comes on board, they plan on running about a 12 race schedule. Regan, of course, the 2008 Robestas Rookie of the Year, driving for DEI in that 01 car last year.
Almost got that first win in that battle with Tony Stewart at Talladega.
That I felt so bad for that kid. I really, really did. I could see both sides of the story there. It was to me it was a ball strike call, and you know, basically NASCAR made the call of it being a strike.
Said he went below the yellow line, and of course he would argue I got forced down there by Tony Stewart, but
there it is. That is going to say that was the judgment call. He was not forced down there,
right,
according to NASCAR's rules. So you don't go out of bounds. But you guys talked about it last night. We're watching the 78 car talking about the yellow line. Now it's a double yellow line to try to get everybody's attention, to let everybody know that it's a lot like driving down the highway. When you see a solid double yellow line or double yellow line like that, you don't pass. So that's an area that you're not allowed to go into anymore. And it's been that way for a while, but now they made an explanation point by making a double.
And a lot of that was due to a suggestion from our Mike Joy of NASCAR on Fox. You know, Mike said, look, we go to California and the line looks the same, but yet you can go down below the line and pass. Where at Daytona and Talladega you cannot. So he made the suggestion of a double yellow line. That's what we've got now. Boy, this has been a busy guy.
Are the simplest ones.
That's it. Just paint another yellow line. This guy has been awfully busy. I know a lot of the teams, a lot of the drivers, they've not been on a racetrack since Homestead. Maybe this guy hadn't been on what you actually call a racetrack, but he's been doing a lot of racing.
He's been driving the wheels off of whatever he's been in, and most of the time it's been off-roading.
The Dakar
Rally, as well as he went to Laughlin and ran another race out there. Actually won that one. Yeah, and finished very well in the Dakar. I mean, he was in the top 5, finished 3rd. So, yeah, Robbie Gordon has been having a very busy off season. And right now he is currently 7th. I mean, in that 7 car, he's 40th, which is now a Toyota. He's one of the other guys who made a change as far as manufacturers during the offseason.
However, tonight
he'll be back in the Dodge he was running from a year ago.
Because that's the rules. Since the Budweiser shootout is set by the manufacturer, 7 drivers from each manufacturer, you have to participate in the same type of car you drove last year.
Now, I want to ask you guys a question. Last night during the final Budweiser shootout practice, I was listening to Kurt Busch, and he told Pat Tryson, my car feels really good. It feels really comfortable, but not a lot of speed right now.
We talked about that a while ago. We saw this exact same thing out of the Dodge camp 1 year ago. They didn't have the speed, but they worked very hard. Pat Tryson, Roy McCauley with Ryan Newman in the 12 last year. They got those cars to driving good, and I will guarantee you no different than tonight, but the same with the dual races that will be on speed next Thursday, and then the Daytona 500 on Fox Sunday a week from tomorrow. When the guy that goes to victory lane, he will not talk about how fast his car was. He'll talk about how good his car drove all day long.
Let's go back to the garage and Dick Berggren.
Well, Steve, the teams with the $20 million sponsors, they're up at the other end of this garage area in the enclosed spots, and they've got a couple of different cars and big tractor trailers full of equipment. Jeff Bodine's here with a car that last year was driven by Dave Blaney. It's a used race car. The engine in it, well, the team is owned by Larry Gunzelman, who's had race cars for 30 years. This is the second new engine Larry Gunzelman has ever had in his whole life. Crew chief Doug Richard, he was the crew chief the very first time Dale Earnhardt won a NASCAR Big League Championship. The driver, Jeff Bodine, has seen the best and the worst of Daytona. He won the 1986 Daytona 500, and in year 2000, he endured one of the most horrific crashes ever seen at this speedway when his truck got up in the air, end over end, side over side, took all the sheet metal off, most of the roll cage, but he survived. He's back here. They're ready to go racing, and these guys want to get in the show. That's the goal. Matt?
Dick, one guy in the show, but very excited about his time so far in practice is Martin Truex Jr. Top 5 on the board.
Yeah, that's not usual for us here. Usually the past few years, we've always been pretty far back. So just got to thank ECR, everybody there working on the motors. Man, anything will run, I'll tell you. Real proud of them. Excited about the weekend. The guys have been working hard all winter, and they've been, since Talladega last year, they've been real excited about coming back down here and seeing what we can do. So far the car's really good. It's got a lot of speed in it. And Bono usually saves a little bit for qualifying, so hopefully that's the case this weekend.
A lot of people interested of how things are working as far as the Ganassi bunch and the old DEI bunch merging, working together.
It's going great, I think all our cars are real fast today, and it's just a testament to the guys and their hard work. And, they went through a lot this winter. A lot of people were talking about the merger, but one thing stayed the same, and them guys are working hard. They were at the shop doing all they could, and it's showing here today. So hopefully, like I said, we can maybe get a little bit more speed out of this, our Bass Pro Chevy, and have a good shot at the pole tomorrow. It'll be the first time we've even had a shot at it, so I'm pretty excited.
And he is currently third on the board, Steve.
Well, Matt, last night, Juan Pablo Montoya said how much he liked Martin Truex, and then Chip Ganassi backed it up and said, you know what? We had to get a better teammate for Juan Pablo. Hence the merger.
And I think so far it looks like everything's looking pretty good, at least for Martin Truex Jr. He's third quickest, and looking pretty good for Bobby Labonte. We were watching him a little earlier in this practice session, discussing things with Max Jones, general manager over there at Doug Yates Racing. And right now, they're putting in some pretty impressive times for that Ford. I mean, he is the fastest guy in a Ford, 7th quickest.
Now, this car that he's driving here, it's the same car that Travis Quapple sat on the pole at Talladega back in the fall of last year. It was brand new there, so not surprised to see these guys.
Heads up.
Up the second quickest.
48.02, 187.4 miles per hour.
They got a fast race car.
We're going to try and keep you updated. This car is locked into the Daytona 500. Car owner points from the 38, not to mention the fact that Bobby Labonte, former series champion.
You know how you say it? Ask and you shall receive. I believe he's got it.
Got some speed.
He got it. I need some speed, boys.
Be there. Speed's presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup practice from Daytona is brought to you by Toyota. For the latest on Toyota racing information, visit toyotaracing.com. Toyota, moving forward. And by Old Spice Swagger, the scent that makes a difference. About 15 minutes left in this 2-hour practice. We have an hour-and-a-half practice beginning at 1:30 Eastern. And Larry Mack talked about at the top of the show. The wind, the weather, the sun, it all makes a difference here.
Yeah, I mean, an hour and 45 minutes ago, the wind was barely blowing, only 5 miles per hour, but there's definitely a wind picking up, and I've just been trying to watch. It may be possibly a little bit of a headwind down the back straightaway, and that's where that gear selection is so important. So I think what you might see a lot of these guys do is try the 2 different options of a gear, and that way tomorrow you evaluate the weather, you evaluate the wind, and you go with which gear you possibly need due to what the weather conditions are.
Dick Berggren standing by with 18-year-old Joey Logano.
And as most 18-year-olds are trying to figure out how to drive on the highway, this kid's trying to figure out how to drive at 190 miles an hour at Daytona. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. The Home Depot Toyota is pretty fast in qualifying trims, so pretty happy with that. And we'll go here back at the second practice and see if we can have some more speed.
Who have you looked to for advice and guidance to try to help you do a better job at Daytona?
Right now, I've been leaning on Denny and Kyle the most, just because I mean they're closest to me and we're around them a lot. So you know, I've leaned on them a lot last night and leaned on some more this morning, and we'll keep trying. You know, I learned so much last night. I'll probably learn the most I ever did at one point on a racetrack. So you know, we'll put that to use and we'll see how we do.
We were watching you last night on television, sawing at the wheel. How hard was it to keep that car under you?
She was a little free. Yeah.
There's the understatement of the 2009 season.
Yeah, I was sawing the heck out of that thing, trying to keep it straight. So it was a handful, but we're gonna work on it for tonight. It'll get better.
You're doing a great job. You really are. Thank you.
Thanks.
You saw right there, 18 years old. He'll be 19 in May, and he will be the youngest driver ever at 18 years and 9 months to start the Daytona 500.
He was shaking his head.
I'm just sitting here trying to comprehend that. I mean, you think about it, Larry. I mean, as crew chiefs, we were always looking for someone who was a seasoned veteran, you know, or at least had some experience, you know, in another series with some age on him. Not say, you know, common sense wise, but this young man is very impressive. I mean, don't take me wrong, but it's still to sit here and think about. He's 18 years old running the Daytona 500.
You know what I thought you were
That's
trying
huge.
to comprehend?
No, don't you
all
go
those young ladies at Casey Kane's window.
Oh, that's not hard to comprehend. It's just you need a calculator for that.
Norm Benning in the 57 car, veteran campaigner out of Pennsylvania. Raced for many years in ARCA. He's down here with giving it a shot. Making friends with the inspectors.
I love you guys. Mean it. Love you guys a lot.
But I think that right there, I think that just makes a statement about Tony Stewart's mindset right now. He is laid back. He's having fun. A little story about Stewart-Haas Racing. Right before, there's the other Stewart-Haas car, Ryan Newman in the 39 car, but there's 150 employees at Stewart-Haas Racing there in the Concord, North Carolina area. And it was about 27 or 28 degrees on Tuesday before the haulers were getting ready to head out down here. And Tony Stewart, Ryan Newman included, gathered every employee of Stewart-Haas Racing, and they gathered outside the shop before the haulers left, with the haulers parked there. And they had 4 guys at the wind tunnel. They waited about 30 minutes on those 4 guys because Tony said, we are not taking this picture until every employee we have is present. Well, after the picture, Tony kind of got his rookie truck driver preoccupied while some of the other team members went to the back of that brand new trailer and put a big rookie stripe on the back of that hauler driver's truck to drive down here and said rookie truck driver wrote on it. Tony's having fun right now.
Well, the opposite of rookie is that guy, 74-year-old James Hilton out of Inman, South Carolina. See his last or most recent win, 1972, 30 current drivers not even born.
Unreal. Again, he was the rookie of the year way back when. I mean, I've known James Harvey Hilton since I came around this sport, and he is truly one of the guys that you can't get him out of here. You can't get him away from the racetrack. You don't believe that this man doesn't love stock car racing. I mean, it's just unbelievable how many times he has put deals together to either run ARCA, to be in a truck race, to be in a nationwide race. Now he's right here back once again at Daytona trying to get into the 500.
And the oldest driver to start a Daytona 500, Dave Marcus, 60 years old, back in 2002.
And you know, I think it was last year that James Hilton was trying to qualify for the 500, and at one point of that race was right there on the fence of making it into the Daytona 500.
And Jeff, Jimmy Hicks just handed me a note. The year James Hilton was Rookie of the Year, 1966.
I was 10 years old at the time. See, that's one of the times right there that guy is somebody's not, that I'm not as old as they are.
This is true.
You know, once. But now there's another guy that works for us. I think was pretty close to being around during that time.
Man named Waltrip.
I'm not mentioning no names, but I'm not going to disagree with you. You keep digging that hole. I'm going to let you take care of it. When he gets up here, he's going to have a long laundry list as far as
he'll get the last say. We've got Mike Skinner in his 23 car. This is about 4 race deal with Mike Skinner. They do have Hendrick engines, and Slugger Labby that won the Daytona 500 a few years ago with Michael Waltrip is the crew chief on this car.
Just saw too where Mike's going to be with Randy Moss Motorsports in the Truck Series, and they have acquired his number. He's been running number 5, and they're actually going to be a 2-truck effort in the Truck Series.
Wasn't it about a couple of weeks ago, Mike Skinner really did not have anything going on, and now he's got a full-time Truck Series ride as well as this ride for several races.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, we were down here for preseason Thunder, and he wasn't even sure at that time.
No, but again, perseverance. That's one other thing about racers and people who work in this sport. They persevere. They figure out ways to overcome. And I think Mike's a great example of how bad do you want it. He goes out, and he and his wife Angie, they start beating the bushes. They start putting deals together. And now he's here at Daytona, and he will be in the truck race. Also, got an excellent chance of making this race here come next Thursday. I mean, I'm not too sure they're going to be fast enough based off what we're seeing right now to have a car to be able to qualify fast enough. But Mike's a great drafter. Larry, you know that. He can get the job done here.
Yeah, I think Mike knows he'll have to race his way in. It's not going to happen with speed. Mark Martin in his 5 car. This will be his last run in this practice set. We only have about 7 minutes left. Right now, Mark is 12th quickest.
He and Mike in close proximity to this racetrack. And what a story that would be if Mark could finally win the Daytona 500. And as we said, back after a couple of years of a part-time schedule, running the full schedule for Rick Hendrick.
Now, Mark's best lap is a 48.19. And this is what we talked about earlier, how you run at the top of the racetrack, just trying to build him, trying to build the speed. And I will guarantee you, when he crosses the finish line to complete lap 1, you'll see him go right to the bottom of the racetrack.
Bill Elliott's still the fastest here. We apologize for some additional problems.
Yeah, I think that wind's getting up and is making things that piece of wire, I think, has got a break in it somewhere.
We'll take a break at the clock. This first 2-hour practice for the Daytona 500 racers. Thanks for being with us.
Welcome back, everybody, to Sprint Cup practice for Daytona 500 qualifying. Down in the fan zone here at the Daytona International Speedway, I'm John Roberts alongside of Hermie Sadler and Randy Pemberton. And you know what? If you read all the reports a couple of months ago, Wood Brothers Racing was supposed to be done, over with, shut down, never to race again. Well, look at what's going on right here. A past champion and Bill Elliott, Randy, is the fastest in this practice session.
Reminds you of the 70s when they brought out David Pearson. They only ran selected races, and they said during this year's Lowe's Motor Speedway Sprint Cup Media Tour, look at, this gives us the best opportunity to concentrate on specific races and do the best we can for our sponsor. I'm not surprised to see somebody like a Bill Elliott up front here. They have different objectives, you know, so do the guys that are just outside the car runner points of top 35. Different objectives.
A lot of the guys we're going to keep an eye on throughout the next couple of days are these, you know, the so-called go or go home teams, Kurt Shelmerding being one of those.
Yeah, you look at Bill Elliott at the top of the speed chart, but JR, what's more intriguing is from 46 fastest all the way down to the bottom of the grid are all go or go home cars, starting with Kurt Shelmerding, who we're seeing right here on the racetrack. He's right now 46th fastest. From 46 all the way down to 55th fastest, all guys that have to get a good qualifying lap in tomorrow.
And this is the kind of practice session where we pay a lot of attention to speeds because, as we mentioned earlier today, you're going to have the front row locked in tomorrow, along with 3 go-or-go-home cars are going to be guaranteed a position in the 500. So speed tomorrow matters in a big way.
Well, it certainly does for those guys. I'm not so sure how much it matters to the majority of the field that is locked in to the qualifying races. Because I took a poll through the garage area and I asked some of these crew chiefs, hey, if you guys come down here and you're pretty sure you can't win the pole, what are you trying to do? They said, we want to build as much downforce into our race cars as we possibly can because we want it to stick to the racetrack at lap 20 or 25. We're not concerned about winning the pole. We're concerned about winning the Daytona 500 and getting a good qualifying spot through the duels.
And I think that's one thing, Randy and JR, we don't talk about enough, to the fans, is these guys are trying to get in on speed. Whatever they can to make the car go fast, that's what they want. These other guys, as Randy says, as we see Scott Speed, he's up to, looks like
32nd.
Yeah, 32nd fastest right now. These guys need speed. The other guys that are locked in, they want comfort. This Daytona 500 is going to come down to handling. They don't care if they qualify 43rd. They just want to get in the show. And there's another guy, A.J. Allmendinger, who thought up until this week that he was going to be locked in the show. Now he's got to race his way in, either by speed or in the duel on Thursday.
Let's go down to Adam Alexander, who has a bit of a weather report for us, Adam, as the wind is picking up.
Well, and that's one interesting thing we should point out is weather can play a huge role in who's on the pole here tomorrow. You talk about it, JR, the winds certainly have picked up, and for a short period of time, the sun went behind the clouds. It was significantly cooler. And one thing you will hear all drivers talk about, if it's windy during qualifying tomorrow, that can make a big difference in where they make their qualifying run in relation to the speed chart. So Hermie, as a driver, how much of having a good run in qualifying is being prepared, and how much of it is just that good old-fashioned racing luck?
Adam, 2 great points. The wind can be a ticket into the Daytona 500 or a pass to go home. If you hit it the wrong way going down that back straightaway, a tailwind's worth a lot. And as far as track temperature, grip is not a big deal, but if it's cooler in the morning, a little bit more tape on that front grille to get that extra speed could make the difference of getting in or going home.
Clint Boyer in the 33 is locked inside the top 35, despite the fact that that's a new number, so he doesn't have to worry that much about qualifying in the middle of the pack. But I guess, Randy, when you look at this, talk about being all over the charts. It's either front row, doesn't really matter much from 3rd through 39, and then after that for the go-or-go-homers, it means everything.
It does. I mean, they're here to lay down a lap. We've come to Daytona and Talladega before and had a go-or-go-homer sit on the front row, and we wondered, man, why is that? Well, you drop the rag and 6-8 laps into the race, they're going backwards because they've done different things to their race car to make them do that. The same case here. Bill Elliott, they need to get in this race. They need to do that for their sponsor. They're doing everything they can to get flat-out speed. I'll guarantee you there's 25 cars in there that's not what they're concerned about. They want to turn a good lap, Hermie and John, but they also want to make sure their car handles at 15 or 20 laps on the racetrack. It's a whole different ball game.
Hey, if you come down here with one bullet to make the Daytona 500,
right,
you want to control what you can control the most. You can control mostly how fast your car will run by itself. You can control that. That's what you want to do.
It's hard to really describe the emotions that go into these go-or-go-home teams because it means so much to make this season-beginning race, the Daytona 500, the biggest one of them all, and it is absolutely gut-wrenching if you come down here and have to go home. But just a sign to say how valuable it is to make this race. If it wasn't valuable, there wouldn't be 57 cars down here trying to make it in to the great American race. As we take a look at more single-car runs on this racetrack, got Travis Quapple in the 28 out there, and he's another one of those guys coming in without points. Yep.
Yeah, it really is. And we've seen year after year, JR, making the Daytona 500 gets you off to such a great start. If you missed the Daytona 500, look back last year to the 10 car, which is now really the 44 car. Patrick Carpentier missed that race. It seems like every time you miss the Daytona 500, Randy, you spend all year trying to dig yourself out of that hole, points-wise, morale-wise, sponsor-wise. This is a race you must be in to be in contention for this championship.
Yeah, and that is true. You have to be in the Daytona 500, but you also have to be in those first 5 races as well. I remember back when Jeff Burton went over to Roush and he had Buddy Parrott as a crew chief. They went to Atlanta, 4th or 5th race of the season. We were talking about them being contenders to win a championship. Rained out, missed the race, took them forever to recover. So Daytona, they have to get in this show.
The last car is out on the track right now, making the final qualifying run of this practice session for Daytona 500 qualifying, which will take place tomorrow. And guys, if you think about what you miss when you miss the 500, you miss that track time in the duels. We talked to Patrick Carpentier last year. Once he got out to Vegas, when he hit Vegas practice, that was the first time he raced since his qualifying lap at Daytona.
There's no way for us to sit here and really, you know, we can't sit here and explain to everybody how important it is qualifying for the Daytona 500, but these guys have worked all winter, even with no testing, as we've talked about. As we see Scott Riggs, Tommy Baldwin, look at there, JR, 16th fastest for a team that's basically less than a month old. Good job by those guys.
Perfect example of somebody taking advantage of an opportunity that's, you know, been cracked open in this sport. To come down here, Tommy Baldwin has done a great job, got a hold of Scott Riggs, plugged him in that race car. You know, they could actually be a factor in the Daytona 500, certainly in qualifying.
Tommy Baldwin's won it before.
Yeah, he's won the Daytona 500 before, and a guy like Scott Riggs, he's got to feel like he's got something to prove to be shuffled out with not a full-time ride. A lot weighing, you know, as far as what Scott Riggs can do in that car. But I think it's a good idea. You know, not a lot of driver owner combinations. I mean, as far as drivers owning their cars being successful, interesting to see what Tommy Baldwin can do as a crew chief and an owner, putting people together around him.
And especially being a single car team and a multi-team world here, the dream is definitely alive for these guys to make the Daytona 500, and everything is resting on either qualifying or racing in that Gatorade duel when it comes down to Thursday. So teams are wrapping up. They're starting to talk about what they found out on the racetrack and seeing exactly where they need to go before a lot of them, 28 cars as a matter of fact, have to change their focus completely after this qualifying practice, back to concentrating on the Budweiser shootout this evening.
Well, that's going to be fun for these guys. These guys love non-points races. Get out there, hang it out, put the pedal to the metal, and try to get a win in the Bud Shootout. No points on the line means these guys will have it on the edge tonight.
And once again, we got to reiterate the fact that you cannot forget these are totally separate race cars. If you're new to the sport of Sprint Cup Series racing, the guys that are in the Bud Shootout tonight, those are cars just designed specifically for that race. They have another car for the Daytona 500, so don't worry about whether they wreck their car tonight in the Bud Shootout. That is not the one they'll qualify and not the one they'll attempt to race in the duels and the 500 here. But so you got the 51 car, Kelly Byers, another one of those guys trying to make a mark for himself here at Daytona.
And look, Kelly Byers on the racetrack, but one thing I'm noticing on this monitor as we watch, he's only been on the racetrack for 2 laps, a product of late entry, getting to the racetrack late getting through inspection, only 2 laps on the racetrack as we wind this practice down in comparison to some of the guys up front have been on the racetrack 8, 9, 10 laps. A big disadvantage for this 51 car to overcome as far as getting a fast lap, Randy.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, Hermie, though, most of the guys only made 2 or 3 runs. It was about all they could get with 57 cars out there. I was in the garage area and was checking around. We see Ryan Newman there in 9th. He's the guy that jumped out at me because it was exactly 1 hour into qualifying when Ryan did that number right there, a 48.17. Bill Elliott did his early. Bobby Labonte's somewhat early. Martin Truex there in 4th went out early. Joey Logano's number was put up early. That was when it was much cooler. When Ryan Newman blistered that lap right there, it was a lot hotter on the racetrack. I think he might be somebody to look at. Who else we got?
Got Jeff Gordon, Jamie McMurray, 18th and 19th. David Reagan in the 20th spot in his Roush Fenway Ford. And it's hard to imagine that one little lap on the racetrack can make such a difference, but it could mean everything when it comes to making the Daytona 500. Marcus Ambrose, somewhat of a new team in the 21st position. Then it's Vickers, the Biff, Juan Pablo Montoya. Then it's Kansas, Travis Quapple, and a lot of eyes on these 2 Richard Petty Motorsports racing teams of A.J. Allmendinger and Reed Sorensen.
Just like normal, you look at this rundown of practice, nothing really stands out that's really telling as far as what's going to happen tomorrow. Not one manufacturer dominating one side or the other.
Michael Waltrip is a 2-time Daytona 500 winner. He's looking for a good qualifying effort. He practiced in the 39th spot. So let's take a look at now what's coming up on speed for the rest of the day. As we said earlier, we got you covered flag to flag, bumper to bumper, door to door, and wall to wall. NASCAR Live is next. Sprint Cup practice coming your way at 1:30 Eastern time. We'll be back with another NASCAR Live at 3 o'clock Eastern time. And don't forget the ARCA race at 4 o'clock. After that, we'll have you covered on race day. And when we come back for NASCAR Live, we're going to take you out to the beach. And we hope no one steals that surfboard before we get a chance to get back there. The work continues in the Cup Garage, and we'll be back.